little mic. How y'all doing? It's good. We're having a good time, right? Okay, I'm putting on my fancy mic.
And it's live.
This is Neil. I'm never going to forget how to say his name, because he said, like, how'd you say it, Neil?
It's a verb.
It's a verb. Get it? You have to think it through. Neil, verb. Get it? Took me a minute. It took me a minute. Okay, can you hear me?
Hold on.
Well, I can project since I'm an actress. Catherine, thank you for your wonderful story. That was beautiful, really beautiful. And I was telling Catherine, I think her husband looks like Billy Graham. Have you ever been told that? That's a compliment, I think. And Scott Murray, you're terrific. Scott Murray, my daughter, is going to be 21 in November. And when she was, I don't have my clicker, Neil. Yeah, when she was about 3 months old, Scott and I were speaking the other day. He goes, I think I met your daughter, about a week after she was born. I said, no, I didn't let anybody see her for 3 months. You couldn't touch her. But I had a little dinner party, and Scott came over with my mother, and Juliet was just, tiny little baby with her little eyes over Scott Murray, Uncle Scott. Oh, we lost our clicker?
Lost our clicker.
No way. We'll find it. Yeah, or you can click it for me, I guess, Neil.
I can do that.
Okay. Anyway, I want to thank the Center for Cancer and Blood Disorders for this wonderful event today. Thank you. And for the great team that's put this event together. I feel like I have a growth coming out of my head. Does this mic look weird? No. Okay, good. All right, so I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So we'll do the little clicker, since we can't find it. Okay, that's me. We know that's me. And we'll move on to the next one. Okay, my family. So my father is from Athens, Texas. My mother is from San Antonio. And I was technically born in Lincoln, Nebraska, because my dad was in the Air Force. He was one of the first to fly twice the speed of sound in the 1960s in the B-58 Hustler. Any men in the audience know the B-58 Hustler? Yeah, oh, there you go. Very dangerous aircraft. So by the age of 3, though, they moved back. My father started to fly with Braniff International. Who remembers Braniff? Oh, yay! The over 50 crowd, remembers Braniff. Braniff International, and so we moved to EULESS, Texas. Your neighbor! And don't call it useless. And when we moved to EULESS, nothing was there. DFW Airport wasn't even finished quite yet. It was getting ready to open. Dad was still flying into Love Field. And it was just, there wasn't, the freeway wasn't there, nothing was there. So there I am with my mother and my father. Okay, this is our little house in EULESS, Texas. And EULESS, we called it the Blue Barn because it was blue and shaped like a barn. I love that house. I now have a ranch and the barn is blue and everything's blue. And I have plates with blue barns. And so it was a great experience. Now, before we get to my mom, you'll go back to the other one. So, when we grew up in EULESS, we didn't even have a Burger King or a McDonald's, so guess where we had to come? Arlington! So if we wanted a doctor, our physicians, Dr. Hardy and Dr. Hansen, does anybody know they were pediatricians in Arlington? I see some nods! So we would actually travel to Arlington to do anything fun or to get help in any sort of way, because I think we had a Dairy Queen in EULESS and that was about it. And does anyone remember Jamie's restaurant at Six Flags Mall? You put the little flag up. Okay, see, we're going down memory lane here. Anyway, so I am very, very fond of Arlington, and I was raised in EULESS, so I'm a hometown girl. The next slide is my mother. My mother is here with me today, Janice GAUNTT. And I thought I'd embarrass her a little bit because there she is. She won so many beauty pageants, right, Mom? Just like she was quite the femme fatale down in San Antonio, Texas. And the next slide, I just get a crack out of that one, Austin Shoe Store. That's pretty funny, right? There's my mom, and we have another picture of my mother. And so I'm going to be talking about my mom in a little bit. She is a breast cancer survivor. My mother has always been my best friend, and I love my mother very, very much. And, what can we say about mothers and daughters? And whenever I've had a good time or a bad time or an in-between time, it's my mother that I call to discuss all the events of life. And I'm just thrilled that she's here and that due to modern medicine, she has been able to survive her breast cancer. And so this is my father. I want to brag on him a little bit from Athens, Texas. There he is in his Air Force get-up. Oh, now, my parents also had a real estate office in EULESS, Texas called Red Carpet Realty. So I don't know if anyone remembers that. So there's my dad in his red jacket. And the next slide. Oh, I left out the most important part. Are you ready for this? I was Little Miss Arlington. Thank you very much. I was Little Miss Arlington. I had no clue what was going on. I thought pageants were a rite of passage for all girls. I just didn't know that there was anything unique about it. But I was Little Miss Arlington. So I, at the age of 6, was actually doing my community service and traveling around businesses in Arlington and with my little crown. Yes. My pageant was over, though, by the age of 7 because I lost my 2 front teeth and, didn't work anymore. Okay, so I have some books I want to give out before I get to talk about what we're here to talk about today. But I was going to ask questions if people could remember. Okay, so I have written 4 books. I have 3 of them with me today. The first one is Holding Her Head High, and it's about 12 extraordinary, powerful women spanning 17 centuries. So I'm going to give this book to whoever can get this answer. Does anybody know on the far left in black and white? No one will know the answer to this at all, but I'll ask. Do you know what show that was? I know. Okay, let's go to the one on the right. What was my character's name in that show? Does anyone know what that show is to the right? I know someone here does. Maggie. No, not there yet. In the middle, with the color, with the blonde hair. Okay, it was a soap opera. Yes, General Hospital! Someone pass the book back to the winner for me. Neil can't, he's doing okay. Thank you. General Hospital. Okay, my next book, it's a daily devotional about my great-grandfather had a collection of daily devotions, and I put it together. It's everything from Cicero, Plato, to Emily Dickinson. Well, we already know that's Maggie O'Connell. Well, okay, this is super easy, but Maggie O'Connell, who was the love interest of Maggie O'Connell? Very good. Who said Joel? Yay! She gets a book. Actually, it was more Fleischman, but that's okay. In your dream. I'm only going to give away one more book in essence of time. Let's think of the... does anyone know in Cliffhanger, which is the bottom slide, where we filmed that? It was supposed to be Colorado, but we were not in Colorado. Mesquite. Not quite. Lots of mountains. Wyoming. No, it wasn't Wyoming. I have a funny story about Wyoming, but I won't tell it today. Okay, it wasn't America. It was close to Switzerland. Not New Zealand. China! Italy! Who said Italy? Oh, you told them! Who else said Italy? That cheats. Did anyone else say Italy? Okay, good. All right, very good. So we had a little fun. Okay. So the next slide, I am living in Texas now. This is my beloved horse, Maggie. And the next slide, I live on my ranch, which is an hour north of here, north of Lake Ray Roberts. I raise longhorn cattle, but I never want to sell them because I name them and they all become my pets. Go back. The other one is at the top, that's Revolution and Liberty, mother-daughter. And this one name is Tiger Bud. And Tiger Bud has horns about out to here, but if I call him by name, he'll walk up to me for a treat. He's like a dog. So I am back in Texas. I moved away when I was 15 to New York City. In 17, I was in Hollywood. Didn't return home until 1995, and I've been Texan back home in my beloved state of Texas. So it's great to be here. I'm not a doctor, but I did play one on TV. That'd be a great question. Does anybody know what show that was on Lifetime? Strong Medicine. But I wasn't 18. Yes, it was called Strong Medicine. We can go to the next slide now. So I played a doctor on TV. I have the greatest respect for all of you that are here in the medical field for the hard work you do. I'm telling you, I did that show for 2.5 years. It was really hard. Just portraying a doctor. But I really respect you so much. And thank you for all that you do. I think that the advancements in the medical field have been amazing. And Catherine was speaking about her faith, and I always believe that in my personal opinion, God, you know, the scientific discoveries is God imbuing this into the minds of brilliant men and women who are making all these discoveries that are healing people today. So I thank you for all that you do. My story today, I did have my ovary removed in 1993. I was working on the set of Northern Exposure and had horrible, horrible pain. I was actually having gallbladder pain. And, you know, everyone thinks that Hollywood is glamorous, but it's not very glamorous. And I was bent over, and they were like, okay, let's just get the camera over her. You know, just keep filming. And I'm literally like lying down going, I think I'm in like a lot of pain. And they literally just put the camera over me and kept filming. So I called my mother, and she's like, go to the hospital. Anyway, I got myself to the hospital. That's the glamour of Hollywood for you. They saw that I was having, you know, I had gallstones, and by a stroke of luck, they just went down and happened to see that I had a grapefruit size, and mine was a cyst, a grapefruit sized cyst on my ovary. So in one fell swoop, I had my gallbladder and my ovary removed. You know, those are some of the God things we're talking about, where someone just absolutely just kind of checks another little area, just to, otherwise it never would have been found. But I have lived through, I'm here today to speak with you as an advocate of someone who has been through cancer. It is very, very difficult, obviously, mostly, mainly, only really for the patient, but for us, those of us who love the patient, it can be absolutely trying and frightening and emotional and exhausting. So I was going to share some of my stories, and I have a little treat for you, and I have to do it very quickly because we have to be out here by 1. Okay, so I want to tell you, my Aunt Celine, now what the story I want to talk to you about today is a timeline. Interestingly enough, my Aunt Celine is the 1960s. Joyce, my beloved sister-in-law's mother, was 1980, and then my mother is 2012. So Aunt Celine was married to my grandmother's brother, my mother's brother. Got it? And if you advanced a couple of slides to my grandmother and grandfather Neil, he has on glasses. Keep going a little bit, keep going. You'll see my grandmother. Keep going, keep going, keep going. We're going to go back though, Neil. There you go. That's my mother's mother. That's my grandmother and my grandfather. And her brother, Paul, and if you go back the other way, you'll see a picture of Paul. There you go, Paul. There's Paul. This was her brother. He had lung cancer. So we're talking 1960s. And so when they discovered he had lung cancer, he just decided he refused treatment. And about a month later, Aunt Celine, who was just, everybody loved Aunt Celine so much, and she was just filled with joy and class, and my mom looked up to her tremendously. And Aunt Celine went into to the hospital in 1961 with uterine cancer, or we're not exactly sure if it was uterine or ovarian, but a cancer that she had, and she had a hysterectomy. So they did not do any chemo or radiation at the time, though. And so they decided that they were going to go and enjoy life, and when they returned, or maybe Paul got this lung cancer a little bit later. I don't think Paul had the lung cancer yet. I think she had just had the hysterectomy. But 9 years later, she went in and discovered that she had breast cancer. And that at the same time as when he discovered he had lung cancer. He decided then and there that he was not going to die before she did. He was going to live through, he was going to survive to take care of her. Talk about a love story, right? And so she had a mastectomy. They didn't do any chemo or radiation with what she had going on with her hysterectomy earlier. She had a double mastectomy, and she also, then they found it in her back and her liver and things of that nature. But back then they did try to do chemo and radiation, and she lost all of her hair, she lost all of her eyelashes, and with the radiation, they burned holes so badly into her body that they just didn't heal. The wound never healed. And she eventually passed it took about, I think, it was about eight months or so. And Paul lived, through this whole experience with his own cancer, Uncle Paul. And I remember being with my grandmother. I was only about 8 years old, and my grandmother, who's very stoic, she just started to cry and sob because he was lying on the couch and he was in such distress. So she passed, and then he passed right after. And he did live to get her through this episode, to when she passed, and then he went with her, so to speak. But they were both beloved relatives that I will always remember, and we would go to their lake house and have Easter egg hunts and whatnot. The reason I bring this up is because, I was a young child watching what cancer was doing and how it was affecting the sorrow that it was bringing. Also, I think it's really interesting to see how far medicine has come, to the fact that the radiation just burned holes in her body that she could not recover from that. Now, Joyce, if we go to the next picture, when I was raised in EULESS, Texas, up the street was Joyce Early. And Joyce Early had all these kids. And Joyce Early was a school teacher and award-winning. Then she became a principal, award-winning principal. And her daughter, Rosalind, was my best friend, who eventually my brother married. So it's kind of fun. So I'm very close to Joyce. She's just a warm-hearted, brilliant woman. And Joyce, in 1980, discovered she ended up she had breast cancer, and so they did a mastectomy. And they did not do chemo or radiation afterwards. They said they got it and it was all fine. But then she felt a lump under her breast 9 years later, and she went to the doctor and he said, "Oh, it's nothing." And she later on was taking a bath and didn't have a washcloth, and she noticed it was bigger, and she goes, "Oh, I think it's something." So then she had a double mastectomy, and then she had the chemo and the radiation. She'd had the chemo on Friday and go back to teach school on Mondays. And she had chemo for 4 to 6 months, and the radiation for quite a long period of time. But she is alive. She has survived. She's alive today, and still as brilliant and determined and fun-loving as ever. So this is a great success story of how far medicine had come from the 60s and 70s, because Zolene was the 60s and 70s, to now the 80s and the 90s.